Sound Gospel Radio. Listen, y'all, we're here and we're back another Thursday night on soundgospelradio.com. And we're here for our conversation called Let's Talk About It. Yes, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And we're back another night and we're excited because what gets us excited is to know that there are people that are tuning in, to know that people are being blessed. It gives us an energy, y'all. We're human, and some days we're tired and some days we're exhausted, but it gives you an energy that definitely helps us move forward. And so we're definitely excited about that. So, hey, listen, we have our great crew that be a part of us each Thursday. I almost said Wednesday, but it's Thursday because TGIT. I used to tell the kids at my old job, I said, if you can get through Thursday, then you can make it to Friday. They say, why you get excited about Thursday night? I said, if I can make it through Thursday, Friday, I almost hit the button. Friday is right around the corner, and I'm just excited about it. So listen, y'all, we're happy to have our great panelists and our great co-host and those that are here on stage. So let me start off, y'all. She is the co-founder and the vice president of Sound Gospel Radio, and that is my wife, Mrs. Jaleesa Hoskins. Come on in the room. Hey, Jaleesa.
Hey.
Jaleesa, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. And always good to have you here. And listen, y'all, I tell you, I thank God because we are blessed here at Sound Gospel Radio to have some great people that are a part of this radio station. And she sits as one of the executive board members of Sound Gospel Radio. You've had the privilege to hear her in the past, and her name is Mrs. Marcia Johnson. Yes, come on.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. I'm waving back. I'm representing everybody that's listening and everybody that's watching. Hi, we're waving back and saying hi back to you. Yes, ma'am. And it's so good to see you tonight. And thank you for being a part of this conversation again. Like I said, you bring so much value input, and we are so blessed to have you as one of our own. We could say our own Sound Gospel Radio own Mrs. Marcia Johnson, and definitely happy to have you tonight. And already, y'all, he already came excited, already came ready. He was actually egging me on, y'all, in the back comments, telling me to hit the button. I just I said no. He told me, he said, hit the button. Who am I talking about? That's nothing but my man Nate Matthews, man. What's going on, my man?
Good evening.
Nate,
glad to be
I'm starting to think that you were one of those ones. I'm starting to think you were probably one of those ones that started trouble and then left the person to it. Was that you growing up? Egg them on, get them all hyped, and then they go in big and bad. And I'm like, yeah, because Nate, you on that?
I've been known to roll a few grenades.
Okay. Setting me up, man. Setting me up. I see how you're doing. Setting me up. Oh my goodness, yes. And so just happy to have you, man, tonight. And
amen.
Again, I'm sorry I got too excited. But how you doing tonight, man?
I'm well. I'm glad to be here amongst my fellow believers and Sound Gospel Radioites.
Yeah.
Hey.
The Sound Gospel Radioites. Oh my goodness. Yes, listen. Definitely happy to have you. And we already have a comment already. Mrs. Connie Lane, she sits on our executive board as well. And she said, hey, fam, ready to receive some good old nuggets. Well, we're ready for you to give some too. So you can also comment in the comment section so we can share some nuggets tonight. So always happy to have you be a part and tuning in tonight. So listen, y'all, tonight's conversation, y'all, we're talking about toxic relationships. We're talking about toxic relationships. We started off last week asking the question, where do we stand? And that question was asked when it came to friendships, family, when it came to relationships, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, et cetera, situationships, whatever you want to call it. Where do we stand? So we went from there to establish the consistency and the continuance of a relationship. Is it meant to stay together? Is it meant to be broken up? Is it meant to, how can we respect each other's boundaries? How can we respect where we are now in life when it comes down to people that you may not have talked to in a while or that you have a relationship with. And so we grow from there, and we established some areas there, and we're growing from there into this moment of toxic relationship. And y'all, you see that the theme still is dealing with our health. We talked about recently mental health. We talked about spiritual health. We talked about physical health. And this is still dealing with our health. It's still dealing with the wholeness. Oh my goodness. It's still dealing with transformation. Again, I believe I call it the message of transformation. Here at Sound Gospel Radio, we're building hope and we're transforming lives 24/7. And like I said before, that was built from the ministry that I'm a part of at Eureka Transformation Church, where the word of God is being taught, and it's taught to a level that it brings forth a transformation, a change, which makes you better, which makes you successful, which makes you succeed. Is all through the word of God, and through coming through realization of who you are and what God wants you done. So so many of our conversations are always going to consistently get back to that moment, because I believe that God wants all of us to be well, to prosper, to be great, not just we're good and this one suffers. No, he wants all of us to be better. So we're going to talk about this conversation tonight, y'all. Toxic relationships. You know what? I did have a definition. Miss Marcia, please forgive me for pulling you on the spot. But can you give me a definition? What is the definition of toxic relationships? Just an overall definition of toxic relationships.
Well, for one, you would have to start with what toxic is.
Okay.
That's something, it's considered to be something that's poisonous.
Wow.
Very harmful.
Wow.
Or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way. And those two words, pervasive and insidious, are very important, because pervasive means it exists in or it's spreading through every part of something, especially of an unwelcome influence or a physical effect. That's the pervasiveness. The insidiousness of it means it's proceeding in a gradual, subtle way with harmful effects, or in a word, it's treacherous or crafty or subtle.
Wow. Wow. That just made you look at it from a whole different perspective, y'all. Wow. Like, that's just like like, did we ever look at it like that? Because you already had me at poisonous. Like, when you said poisonous, I was like, wow, oh my goodness. Right? Sheesh is correct. Like, that's a good way to put it, my man Nate. That's just like, sheesh. Wow. So, okay. So with that, to know that there are relationships that carry, it's almost like a walking virus. It's carrying a virus that spreads. Didn't she just say that about how it spreads? It's like, wow, like that. Yeah. Like, is it that serious? Yes, it is serious, y'all. Talking about toxic relationships. And so, wow. So there's so many different common signs. And before we even get into maybe a boyfriend and girlfriend, a husband and wife type of thing, we want to talk about how there's toxic relationships, y'all, that started off with family. I'll say this. I'll say it just like this. Many times people are in a toxic relationship with a boyfriend and girlfriend. Let me leave the topic up. With a boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife, because it stemmed from a relationship that they had within family. You know, some things are just carried over. The toxicity is carried over into that relationship of situations and things they did not deal with in the past, that they did not deal with themselves, whether they were the ones that were being the abused or they were the abuser in the family, you know, and they carry these things over into relationships. But I want to start with this, that many times the toxicity does start in family, and it's just so many different signs. And somebody say, well, if I'm in a toxic relationship, how do I know? And I'm going to go from here, and we can always swim our ways through different parts of the conversation. But there are a few signs that you can look at that say, you know, I think I'm in a toxic family member, or I think I'm in a toxic relationship in family. And the question may arise as to how can I identify that? And there are some signs, and these are some signs that different doctors and psychiatrists said. One sign is they accuse you of things that you don't feel that are true. Many times you're accused of things that you don't feel that are true. Another sign could be that the family member can make you feel like you're never enough, or feel bad about yourself, or otherwise make you feel emotionally destabilized. Another example could be that they don't take responsibility for their harmful actions. And so, they're coming at you, beating you up, and then they'll never take responsibility for what they're doing at you. Oh, here's the big one here. They manipulate you to make you feel guilty. That's toxic, y'all.
Wow.
Manipulating you to make you feel guilty. Look at what you did. Look at what you did. And you're sitting there, trying to do the best you can, never appreciated. And of course, the manipulation to make you feel guilty. It's a shame. It's a shame. They don't take responsibility for their harmful actions. I said that. They put you down or humiliate you. And not just privately, publicly.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Humiliate you publicly. It's like in front of everybody. And you know what? Okay, I'm gonna say it, and I don't care. I Jaleesa and I talk about it often. You never look at it until you look at it, especially watching TV shows. You have this person say he's a dad, and the dad is telling his daughter, "You're this, you're ugly, you're fat." Well, Dad, you're fat. Dad, you ain't the best looking thing in the world. And it's funny how we allow the words from these family members to come at us and they hurt us. But wait a minute, let me look back. You ain't the best cup of tea. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, so it's funny how they do. They put you down and then humiliate you in front of other people and constantly use words of just hurt and hate. I'll say it like that make you feel bad. Also lie about things.
Because a lot of times they're projecting.
Go ahead.
I mean, a lot of times it's projecting. That's what they think or feel about themselves, and they're seeing themselves in you, like the same attributes about themselves they don't like. So instead of being encouraging to try and help you, things that you can fix or change, they don't. So I don't know why in our sometimes mindset, putting someone down or thinking embarrassing them is going to make them or prompt them to want to do something about it. Yeah. It usually doesn't, especially if it's someone whose opinion you hold in high regard. Most of the time, if it is a parent-child relationship, the kids are looking at their parents. What their parent says and thinks about them matters a lot. So if the dad is saying this, that, and the third, you're fat, you're ugly, that is not going to make the child want to feel better about themselves. It's just going to make them implode if my parent feels this way about me, then everybody probably feels or thinks this about me.
It's the truth. It's the truth. And I see Connie, she's agreeing about putting their insecurities on others. And it's just so true, y'all. That's what happens. So these are, there's so many different signs. They bully or harass you. We just talked about that. But bully, harass you, frequently insult or criticize you or repeat terrible things about you, like they said. And when you hear this, it's a shame that when you hear this from a parent, older sibling, cousin, someone that's older than you that you look up to, and you hear these things, it does something psychologically. And you can carry this thing into life, always thinking, because I've talked to people who think they couldn't sing. Oh my goodness. Y'all just bringing back so many memories now. People I've talked to down through the years, people that thought people I've met had beautiful voices, but they were always told they couldn't sing because their family members did nothing but come at them. Oh, I can't sing. I'm always offbeat. And I'm like, no, you're not. And then I'm like, you actually sound better than some of your family members that think they can sing. You know what I'm saying? It was amazing that you see this. And I'm like, wow. Or because it's a shame because we can also experience toxicity within family when someone sees, and I'll even say this from a sibling perspective, cousin perspective, or, sometimes parent perspective, where they see that you have a gift and a talent that they don't have. And now they're going to do everything they can to knock you down, to make you feel lesser than you are. Because again, they don't want to see you succeed. They don't want to see you be greater than them. So they'll do everything they can to suppress you. You know, I just thought about again. I want to think about the shows that's coming to me directly. There's a show that I got to catch up on the season, but it was on Netflix, and all the kids had superpowers. If I could think of the show, it's gonna come to me after a while. The Umbrella Academy. All the kids had superpowers, right? The one girl out of all the kids, because they were all born on the same day, and they all had these superpowers. And everybody can do. I mean, one can whisper and make you think what you want to think. One can jump and do. I mean, they all had different ones. And this one girl, she thought she never had any powers at all. She had no powers whatsoever. And the father that was taking care of them kept feeding her pills. Well, come to find out, y'all, as the show went on, she was the most powerful out of all of them. And because he didn't know how to handle her, he constantly suppressed her and made her feel lesser than what she was. Never even told her that she had powers. Now, here's the deal. He could have told her that she was powerful and he could have had ways of balancing her out. But no, he was afraid and it wasn't even out of protection. He was the intimidation of, she's too powerful. I don't know what to do with this, so I'm going to suppress it. That's a shame.
Yeah.
And that happens, y'all, in family. Listen, I can give you scriptures about it, but we could talk about actual family where you can see family members can see another one doing better, another one that's gifted or talented, and they will do everything they can to suppress it because you're doing better than me. It's like, nah. It's a shame. So I'm just giving y'all some signs. If you think that you were in a toxic family, just giving you some signs that this could be a toxic situation. Is there any other pieces of toxicity that we can cover when it comes to the family perspective?
Well, when it comes to, if we're saying relationships, that means anyone else that you're in contact with. If it's,
I like that.
Siblingship,
I like that.
Friendships,
I like that.
Marriage.
Yes.
And the toxic relationships, the focus of them usually are on behaviors and the negative behaviors that add negativity and upset to your life. And why they do that, many times toxic people are dealing with their own stress and trauma. Is what Jaleesa just said about the projecting, the feelings about their own selves. Yeah. And they project that out on someone else, or the insecurity that I have about myself, and you think that someone else is automatically feeling or thinking the same way about me that I think about myself is usually negative. But most people would be surprised. Other people's perspective of you is usually better than the one you have of yourself.
True.
And that could be good and or bad, because if you have a pride issue, it humbles you. And if you don't have a pride issue, it will keep you humble. To know that somebody thinks of you in a high regard.
It's true.
But some of the things that Nathan listed, some are behaviors, some are traits. Yeah. Traits are things like being manipulative. That's a trait. Now, there are behaviors that are associated with that, and it's usually lying, because you'll be deceptive. To they gaslight, which means they make you feel bad about yourself or attempt to make you think what you know, that you're imagining it's not real, because it's usually a deflection for them not to have to take accountability for their words or actions. That's just a few. I mean, the negativity, they're judgmental. Those are traits. Passive aggressive. Yeah, those are traits. They're self-centered. They have difficulty managing their anger. They're controlling. Those are traits of toxic people.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. And as you were talking, I was sitting here writing down the contrast between a behavior and a trait, because that's just, little things like that will stick big to me and heavy to me, because I'm just like, wow, okay. Yeah, that's some behaviors and some traits, y'all. Wow. Listen,
I would say there's even different degrees or levels of toxicity. It's like sometimes your high toxicity load, the pH is a little off in there. So I feel there's different levels of toxicity. There are some that may have or exhibit some of the behaviors and or traits, and it's it's doable, it's manageable. You notice it, but it's not enough to make me want to be out of relationship with you. And then there's some that's just, no, this is just too strong for me. I can't. It's just, and sometimes I wonder what causes like the different levels. Because I feel like we all could have some toxicity about us depending on who we're talking to or who's talking about us. So sometimes it's like, I mean, I do really firmly believe the Holy Spirit definitely helps dilute, because we could all, I know I could, some habits, some toxicity could be, no, that's not good. But it's just always interesting to me. Like, I think the lengths we'll allow ourselves to go to, or the fact that we'll notice a behavior and want to change it, or even the ones who may notice the behavior and don't want to change it or don't know how to change it. So yeah, I just think there's different levels, but it's always interesting to see how each person is, their level of toxicity, and how they maneuver, how the people around them, because I do a lot of that watching too. Like, I watch how the people they're closest to handle them or handle or respond to it. It's like, do they consider that toxic, or do they view it, or is it just me that views it as a toxic trait?
Because I think it's tolerance. I think some I'm trying to answer and have so many different answers in my head. I think the reason why the toxicity is as large as it is, and give a shout out to my cousin Carl Stewart. Good to see you, man. Peace and blessings. I think that the toxicity in some areas are so strong, like Jaleesa was saying, when a person has too much time on their hands and they're just sitting there thinking, whether they went through some trauma, some abuse, some situations, and you allow that time to increase and increase and increase. You're not finding any solutions. You're not trying to search any solutions at all. And you're allowing those thoughts to build. Because I'm telling y'all, I forget how many thoughts we can think in just 1 minute. And thoughts can be like this. I mean, just thoughts upon thoughts upon thoughts. And before you know it, you've created a whole album or a whole book full of just negative thoughts that can increase that toxicity. This is just my opinion. But the other thing that came to my mind too was when it's tolerated. When you have a family member that you know that is just just rude, ignorant, abusive, toxic, and no one's saying something, or the one family member says something and everyone else is just sitting on the wayside, not backing them up and just allowing it to happen, that family member is going to continue. They're going to continue because it's encouraged.
Because that's a level of toxicity too. A lot of times in families in general, but sometimes I see it a lot more in our culture, Black culture, where they're almost taught to be loyal to dysfunction and toxicity, and we're just taught that because we're family, we're supposed to tolerate this and deal with this. There's a difference between your behavior is poor and us having your back in public, like we're not just going to let somebody stomp you and trash you. And there's a difference between that and still correcting or checking or addressing the toxicity or the behavior at some point.
Because, like I said, I listen. It's just amazing, and I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes in different situations where I'm like, okay, am I the only one that sees this? Or there's been times where I've said something to a relative, and there's no backing. There's no, depending on what it is, there's no, there's no support there. It's like, oh man, what's up? And then, like you said, as time go by, as I got older, I'm like, wait a minute, they aided. The different family members aided in that, by allowing this behavior to come on. So then now, as so many years have gone by, now the rest of the family is now finally starting to see the individual for how they are. And now they're getting tired of them. And now they want to, set boundaries. But for me, I'm like, y'all didn't see that back when. But then I learned that many times they won't set the boundaries back then, because at that time, that family member is still resourceful. At that time, that they're still getting something out of that family member, whether it's finances, whether it's hanging out, or whatever the case may be, or the relationship. So I will ignore this negative part of you because I'm enjoying this part with you, when I'm like, come on, y'all, there's red flags all over the place. And if you love me and I'm really at a negative level or toxic, say something. But again, sometimes you're on that lonely road. So I had to already set a boundary. and and take care of me, which we talked about that the other day, or one of our future recent conversations is sometimes you got to take care of yourself and you have to set the boundary. But I believe, Jaleesa, that's where some of those levels come from.
Mommy,
like I said,
did you want to say something?
I was just going to speak to what you said, Jaleesa, about the different levels, and we're using that as a descriptor because we can't really measure the levels. We're measuring the behavior that we see. But sometimes the levels seem more intense or worse or more toxic because some are just their subconscious or conscious bitterness. And understand this, when someone is toxic, it almost always comes from something that they've already been through that caused them anger or pain. So it's not paranoia. They're not just making these things up, but sometimes the levels are deeper because it's a subconscious bitterness or something worse. There's a psychosis there because of a trauma.
Yeah.
And the psychosis has to deal with the mental aspect, and they're usually out of touch with external reality. So how they control the trauma and the pain is they lash out, and usually the more ignored or unheard they feel or seen, the deeper or higher the level of the toxicity. Like everything, I'm telling you, an unhealed person can almost find defense in almost anything you say or do, and their behavior is going to show that. Either it's going to be their words or their actions, and it's usually directed at one source. But if people around seem to celebrate or tolerate the person who caused the offense, like the violator, their actions now will become directed to the people who seem to be celebrating or taking up for the one who offended or violated them. Those are deep levels to have to deal with that pain. And when you know that could be the reason why somebody is responding away, for me, it gives me more compassion for them. I usually don't become more angry. I actually pity them. And I don't mean pity them like in a pathetic way. I mean, like, I'm really saddened for them. And I notice with me, it does make me more tolerant of them in a moment because I'm understanding their pain. And you're trying to appeal to them in that place instead of responding to the behaviors directly. That does not mean that you don't acknowledge it or hold them accountable, but there is a way and a time to do it. It's hard.
It's the truth. It is so true. It is hard. It is hard. And so again, like we're talking about toxic relationships, and we honed in on family. And again, like I said, we're here to shed some light and here to give some hope. And like I said, there is hope on the other side, and we're going to get to that point too. But we just, we're just digging deeper and just, bringing up different examples of things that we all may have experienced in life. No family is perfect. That's what makes us unique, is that we're not all, cookie cutter. We're not all the same. We all have different experiences. And I believe for those that are believers in Jesus Christ and those that have given their lives to the Lord, they have learned that those situations have made us who we are in Christ, has made us better because we gave those things to the Lord and he saved us, and he's yet saving us and yet renewing us. And so a lot of those trauma moments, y'all, we can let the Lord cause healing in our body. And that is the blessed piece about it. And I want to say hello to Corey Warren, who said, good evening, SGR family. Thank you and appreciate you for tuning in. And listen, y'all, if you haven't already, I know this is a tight subject and I know it's a kind of rough, but if you haven't already, if you're watching us on social media, you can definitely like and share today's broadcast. What it does is, listen, you may have some friends that need to hear this or see this. You can share it with them, inbox it, or just like it. Maybe if you like it, it'll just show up on the timeline and say, who's this group? Who's this SGR? And it'll really be helpful. So please like and share, because it'll help spread this conversation abroad. And we know many people are going to watch the replay. Same thing. If you're watching the replay, if you're listening to the podcast, please share it. Let somebody know about this conversation today, because we're talking about
like the replay. If y'all watch it later on Facebook, y'all can like it. Come on, y'all. we shouldn't have to ask y'all this every single week. Y'all watch us, please like it. Even if you're not comfortable sharing it, like it, comment, participate. It makes the conversation more interesting. A lot of times when y'all interject or throw questions or comments in there, it gives us something else that we can expound on or talk about. Participate, join, please. We don't want to have to ask y'all every week. Like.
So again, I'm just going to just retract and probably add some other pieces in here. We're talking about toxic relationships, and again, we started talking about family, and so I just want to say this. And when you have toxic relationships with people in your family, it can leave you feeling physically, emotionally, or psychologically threatened, y'all, and even drained. Toxic family members are often at the root of poor relationships. So it isn't surprising that they might cause you to dislike them, or I try not to use this word, and we try not to walk in love, but you may even hate them sometime, y'all. It can get to that point, and the Lord wants us to, that's something that's some surgery he does on our heart. But learning to recognize the signs of toxic relationships may help to better understand your reasons for not liking your family. You may have some family members you don't care too much for, and so that may, learning the reasons and the behind the scenes, because toxic people, they tend to leave you feeling disrespected, where you feel that the family members do not respect your needs, feel exploited. Toxic family members often have high expectations, yet do not return the favor. Oh my goodness, I'm giving y'all different examples here. Unsupported. These relationships leave you feeling like the people who are closest to you don't know the real you and aren't willing to have your back when you need them. These other examples can be misunderstood. Toxic people make little effort to understand you as an individual. Can be negative. These people are often often bring out your worst qualities and leave you feeling negative about others or the world in general. Or to feel blamed, y'all, to feel blamed when things don't go as planned. Toxic family members may heap the blame on you and refuse to take responsibilities for their own actions. So also you can pay attention to how these behaviors may make you feel, and then when they happen the most. Because listen, y'all, those that are listening, learning to recognize them can help you look for ways to cope. And that's the thing. We want to shed some light with you. I'm not just going to tell you to pray. I'm not just going to tell you to speak in tongues. I'm not going to tell you that. We're going to tell you of ways that you can cope. But the first thing is identifying. It's identifying that this situation, identifying the toxicity, identifying where it is, where did it begin, how did this continue, when does it happen? And when you deal with those things, you're able to move forward. I just want to just dive off real quick. I was in a conversation earlier today. What can also add to toxicity is I'm just going to just dive off. Family secrets. Family secrets can lead to some how can I say this? Some unanswered areas, and can really lead to some levels that make things worse, because there's toxicity within the parent, or the parent and their grandparent, or however. So anyway, I was on a conversation with someone today, and they were sharing with me about their family member, and they want to know where they're coming from. And so they asked their parent, and the parent is not giving much information. You need to know about them people and going off. So they went on Ancestry.com and started finding family members. And when the parent found out, the parent got angry because they started reaching out to find out what was going on. And so as things go on, you start to find out with this particular situation, the issue was with the parent and the sibling, or the parent and the grandparent. And the issue was something, it wasn't abuse. It wasn't, wasn't something crazy. It could be just a little quarrel. You stole my Barbie doll when I was 3. Now y'all not talking for 50 years, and you're going to deprive all this other family and grandkids, and you know what I'm saying? And so that came up in conversation. And it's really affecting the person I was on the phone with today, because it's like, dang, like, what's going on? Like, what is it that you're not telling us? Because we want to know our family members. We want to know. And so there's some toxicity there between that person, and they're refusing to move on. They're refusing to not even look at the fact that, hey, my daughter, my son, my grandkids want to know their family members, but because they're going to hold on to that. And so how do people deal with that? with that type of situation. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's like, how do people deal with that? It's really a shame.
That's tough. That goes to actually emphasize what Jaleesa said earlier about being loyal to dysfunction.
Yeah.
And you can cause your toxicity to become a generational cycle.
Wow.
That can become inherited by those under you that are exposed to it. Mm-hmm. And so I believe the best way to handle something like that is an open forum. You basically have to do the opposite of what is causing the toxicity.
Yeah.
Keeping the secrets, being loyal to dysfunction. Instead of dysfunction, bring everybody together, get some order, let everybody say what has affected them, and that there's healing in that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily if there's someone that doesn't want to hear it or doesn't want to be a part of it, there's still healing in the process of the person verbalizing how they felt.
Yeah.
Because they're releasing and allowing it to be heard. So it's a profound. I mean, and I don't think that that's the end all be all. There's probably other ways to handle that, and I would love to hear it as well. But that's my perspective.
Yeah, because I just find it amazing. I just want to throw it in there. Family Feud. That's what I'm trying to throw in there. Is you have the feuding, and then you find out after all these years that that's what y'all been feuding about. This is why this one is not talking about that one. Go ahead, Miss Marcia. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say. I just want to say. I'm gonna say a couple of words because they're examples of toxic, and what we do when we're exposed to these type of toxins. If I said the word radon or lead, like in water, or the exhaust from cars, chemicals, there's substances that can hurt us. Mm-hmm. And when you understand how they can hurt you or that they can hurt you, your natural response is that you reduce your exposure to it. Mm. Words and actions can be toxic to people. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the first step is, because I agree, you should be able to talk, and a conversation needs to be had with at least two people or a group of people, whoever else is involved. But if you're not at that point yet, you will reduce your exposure to that toxin. And if a person is a toxin, here's what we haven't said a lot, and I'm going to say it directly. If you are the toxin, people are going to try to reduce their exposure with you. They're not going to want to be around you, in your company. They just don't want to be close to you because they know it can hurt them. It's going to affect their physical and most definitely their mental well-being.
Wow.
Jaleesa said something earlier, and so did Deacon Nate, to do the opposite, because we're talking about toxic. I call them, Nathan, you said it too, I call it detoxifying a relationship. Hey. And one of the first steps was identify what the toxic influences are. That takes a conversation. And if anybody's listening, and that's including us hearing it, if you're going to have a conversation, the first step I would say, please, please, please do not lead the conversation with accusations.
Yes.
It's okay for you to say how you feel, because really no one can tell you how you're feeling unless they're feeling with your emotions. They can only tell you what their intent was. But when you go and saying you do this or you act like this, that's not usually what somebody's intent is, and you're accusing them, and all they're going to do is shut down. They're going to become defensive, and Deacon Nate just said it. The pattern continues. So now that's going to be the new, most recent thing that they're going to focus on, to stay angry or have an argument or to distance themselves from you. And no reconciliation is going to be made that way. Wow. And that can go on for generations.
Yes.
Wow.
I agree. Wow. Even with that conversation too, I think it'll help also determine whether something is a secret or if it was just private. Those are two totally different things. Yeah. Private means we're not acknowledging, we're not acknowledging that whatever it is happened. It's just not everybody's business. That's something we
right. We're not
discussing and announcing. Secret is you holding it for some reason that you don't want. It's either caused harm or those are two totally different things. That's why the conversations need to happen. It goes back to how we talked about before, secrecy versus privacy. Some stuff, especially in families, you're labeling it a family secret. It's not a secret. It's just private. It's not everybody's business. It's not something we're announcing or need to talk about. It's just private, not a secret. Those are two different things.
Even in a family, if you don't know at the time that it's happening, it's not a secret. It was just none of your business either.
Right.
And
exactly.
Because we do tend to think that everything that goes on in the family, if you take the nuclear family, like a parent and children, at a certain age, children tend to think that everything that goes on, like with their mom and dad, you think that's your business. And I'm telling you, it's not. Some things they don't share with you at a certain age.
Exactly.
You're not ready for it. It's not appropriate. And everything that you don't know doesn't make it a secret. It just meant you didn't know it.
Right.
Like, there's some stuff in my older years I still didn't want to know.
Right. And as an adult child, there's still some stuff that's none of my business. I don't want to know. It's just, why would I want to know that? And then if I did know or find out, how has that benefited or helped? Like, how would, okay, now you know, and what?
And I laugh because there's been some things where it's like light stuff, y'all, nothing crazy that my mom, because I'm old enough to deal with it. So she's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Mom, and she's like, well, you grown now, you can take it. I didn't want to know that. It was simple stuff, but we laugh about it now. But I'm like, no, I'll be the child. I don't care how old I am now. But it's so true. It is so true. Listen, we have a comment here. Carl Stortz said, example, 2 brothers I know, they didn't speak to each other for years for something petty. He said one brother died and the other brother was heartbroken because they didn't squash their differences. Wow. That is so sad, man. Wow. So if, like I said, we're helping you. I hope we're helping somebody today. If you are experiencing some toxicity with family members, and like I said, we're going to continue this conversation in the future, even when it dives into marriage and situationships and all that, it is good to have a conversation. And I like what everyone has said. If the person doesn't want the conversation, then there's ways to move on with that as well. Okay, but at least that you're stepping up to the plate to initiate the conversation. And sometimes I know, and I was in a book club recently, and we're talking about, sometimes you get upset because, like, why do we always have to initiate? And I heard one of the persons in the book club, and they were just sharing. They said, you know what? I just got to a place where I'm just going to just initiate if I have to. Because sometimes, as people of God and as the leaders, and I believe that we're all the leaders, not just on platform, but when you serve the Lord, you become a leader because you become an example of Christ. And sometimes, is that annoyance is why? Because I'm saved or I'm the one that, want to serve the Lord, that I got to lead. It's annoying sometimes, but hey, we got to do it. So we just go ahead and do it. And sometimes I got to be the one to start the conversation off, So it's so true. It is so true.
Man, that example right there is an image of how powerful words can be. So if he had the opportunity to express himself prior to, that loved one passing, how much of a weight would have been lifted rather than, just holding that grudge. And now he's bearing the weight and the what ifs and the hypotheticals.
Yeah, that's
words.
True.
Words are powerful, and I think words are a detox, right? Like Ms. Marcia was mentioning, words are a part of detoxing. If you can express yourself verbally and let another person who can be toxic or has levels of toxicity, let them know how you feel, that could be your detox, either from them or what they're spewing.
Wow.
Right.
I just want to say this. I don't know if y'all are. I'm taking notes. I'm over here noting down. So y'all see me down here looking down. I'm just like, wow, because I like some of the words that we use about the poison. I told you we start out with that poison and the behavior and the traits. So as we're talking and having conversation, I'm on stage with these folk and I'm taking notes because this is notes that can help myself, but also help other people that I talk to throughout the week. So again, like I said, if you taking notes, take the notes. listen to the replay. Those that are actually listening to on the radio, and I see you, those that are listening to us on our actual radio station. People act like that all we do is do Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that. No, we have an actual radio station, and we can be heard at soundgospelradio.com. And when you go there, you hit listen live and boom, a radio station. Well, praise the Lord. So those that are listening to the radio station, you definitely can have access and find us on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. And we're also on podcasts. I haven't really released it fully yet, but you can actually go to Spotify or Apple Podcast and type in Sound Gospel Radio, and we come up. You can listen to some of our previous talk shows there on Spotify and on Apple Podcasting. Just type in Sound Gospel Radio, and we come right up, and you can catch up with some of the previous conversations that we had. So listen, y'all, we have 14 minutes left on today's conversation. And I would like to talk about how do we cope? How do we cope from dealing with the toxicity? How do we cope? And I'll just start off here. In this article that I've been reading, it says, how can you cope with these feelings? It can be particularly challenging to deal with the situation when you live with or have close contact with family members that you dislike. It's the truth. But whether you still live with your family member or if you have limited contact, finding ways to protect your mental and your mental space and well-being is essential, y'all. It's very essential to find those ways. And so there's so many different ways. And again, we're going to share this. I'm just going to give just a couple of tips and we can move forward. But there's different ways to cope with toxic behavior. You can recognize the patterns and triggers, as we said earlier, of the person's toxicity. So you can figure out how to sidestep it. You can set boundaries. We talked about this before, about setting boundaries in a recent conversation. You can set boundaries regarding subjects you're willing to discuss with the person and which ones are off limits. We just talked about it. I'm just giving you and enforce them as time go by. Avoid arguments with that person. I failed in that. I have failed in that because I'm going to tell y'all, certain family members, they just know how to hit the button. Ooh. They know, I'm going to hit this button. See, they know how to hit the button. Mm-hmm. And so I've been there, and I'm like, and as I got older, from my teenage years, and I'll say this, from adolescence to teenage to now I was in my 20s, you would have thought I have grown up and I remember being in my 20s like, Nathan, why are you still letting them get to you like that? I'm like, I don't know why. And it's because of you love them. When you love that person, you really do care for them. And because of the closeness and y'all grew up together, they have a way of, and so I had to set up some boundaries and now avoid the argument. So avoid arguments with that person. Remember that the word no is a complete sentence, y'all. It is a whole sentence. You can simply say no without explaining or defending yourself. Because that was a hard thing too. It's like, no. And then walk, just no. Mm-hmm. Try to limit your contact with that person. It's a shame, as much as we love, and I really love family and friends, but it's a shame when I've dealt with some toxicity, even with friendship, sometimes that you have to, set a boundary. And it's like, you try to limit your contact with that person in general and avoid engaging with the family member when you do see them. When you see them, there's a way just to, hey, how you doing? Or just, hey, you ain't got to go extra. You ain't got to try to, because sometimes we do that and it's taught in different families.
Not make them feel uncomfortable or make them feel like you're distant, but do it.
It's the truth. So it's like now you want to talk extra because why are you so quiet? Because, and it doesn't mean that you're being nasty or rude. Now, if they want to take it to that level, let them take it. You don't have to go there. I also say this, and I let some other people share about some coping as we get ready to close. But also, you can put the brakes on the person's bad behavior. You could say, this is not a conversation I want to have. And guess what, y'all? You can leave the room or end the phone call. I know it may be a hard thing. Sometimes for me, I wasn't always that person. For me, I didn't want to do that because I knew if I left the room or in the phone call, then now it's going to blow up. But guess what? They're the one blowing up. They're the one wasting all their energy, not me. And it took me years to learn that, y'all. And I'm still learning. I didn't say I kept not myself to have apprehended. I didn't say I got it all together. I'm just saying, it's still a work in progress. Y'all, do we have some other people on stage that can share? What are some ways to cope with the toxicity, with a toxic behavior?
What I call the coping is what I just said about detoxifying the relationship. And it's some of them are repetitive to what you just said. The number one would be identify the toxic influences. Number two, create boundaries.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I say, what's the thing that I need to stop or get out of my life? That's setting a boundary. How about what are desirable or healthy characteristics that you want more of in a relationship with somebody, and articulate that to them, or just know that for yourself? Because sometimes we tolerate the toxicity because we don't have any boundaries in place with the people or the person, and they know it, because you setting one could now be toxic to them. They think that's offensive, especially if it's family. Family tends to think that there are no boundaries set for them. And when I say family, if you're an adult married person out and you have siblings, they're the number one. They think that there shouldn't be any boundaries, and it has to be. It does, because the two worlds will start to collide, and you can't be all things to everybody, and you can't be in two places at one time. So if it involves them needing you and your immediate family needs you, you have to have boundaries in place.
It's true.
It's good.
The boundaries are so true, y'all. It's so true to set those boundaries. I'm looking at these other pieces of coping, to maintain your privacy if you have to. You can make
peace with your choice too.
Yeah, go ahead, Julie. You're on it. Make peace with your choice. It's just so true, y'all. Just so true. I just want to just share this about men in the relationship. And again, we're sounding redundant intentionally because I learned that we all learn differently. We all think differently. We all hear differently, because Miss Marcia may have just said Joe went across the street, and I may have said across the street Joe went, and then two different people say, "Oh, I got it." So we're purposefully redundant because we all hear, we all get things differently. So again, here's another way to for the coping. You may want to mend a relationship. And so healing unhealthy relationships with family members is also an option. This is a step you may want to take if the relationship is important to you. That makes a difference. If the relationship is important to you and you feel that trust, communication, and positive feelings can be reestablished. Now, because I want to say that we all love our family members, but there's some relationships after the situation that happened, it's just a done deal. It's a done deal. But there are some where you can sense and you can feel that, maybe there could be something that could be reestablished here. So when you get to that moment of feelings that can be reestablished, there are steps that can be, that can happen. So this is a step that requires participation of all the people who are involved. Don't allow yourself to feel pressured to bury your feelings or reconcile with people if you are not ready. Listen to this, y'all. According to research by Stand Alone, a UK organization that supports adults who are estranged from their family, having time to process painful emotions is essential. Listen, rather than pressuring people who may be estranged, it is perhaps best to let them have the time and space to heal before attempting a reconciliation. Okay? Okay? It's just let them have that space. Let them have that time. It's just very important. Anybody want to chime in on that before I go to the next piece? Okay. If you're interested, I just want to make sure. If you're interested in feeling better about your relationships with your family members, consider asking them to try what, y'all? Not family prayer. Family prayer is important, but family therapy. Consider asking, hey, can we go to therapy? Let's try family therapy. By working with a therapist, you may be able to improve communication and gain insight, y'all. They may help you feel better about your relationship with them. Therapy is important. Therapy can be so helpful. And listen, therapy, we have therapists, we have life coaches out there. Some ministers are trained counselors. Not all. I didn't say go to every pastor. Some pastors are actually trained in that area. Then you have some people that are friends that are life coaches that are trained counselors, but also therapists. You can go and get you some therapy. You know, oh my goodness. So
Babe, we have a question.
We got a question. I see a few questions. Some some person, what Corey said here, my opinion, he said, understand and protect you. Restricted airspace. All right, I see that. And we do have a question, y'all. Let's answer this question. I heard you, Corey. Connie Lane said, she said, but how long of a time you give that person to process it? How long of a time? So that person needs their space. The question on the floor right now is, how long of a time do we give that person to process it? I'm going to ask the expert, Miss Marcia. Go ahead.
I'll say it takes as long as it takes, because who are we to tell somebody how long it takes for them to be not just over it, but in a place where they can even hear what you're going to say to them and receive it, so that you can move forward either together or apart, but be at peace with whatever decision it is that you make. It takes as long as it takes. And you'll know when, if you try to talk and they're still stank, they don't hear it, or vice versa, y'all are not ready yet. Somebody, I promise you, somebody will get ready to the point, and they're going to be the one who reaches out, and they may be the one who initiates it, or if you initiate it, they're receptive to even hearing what you have to say. It takes as long as it takes. I can't tell you a time on the clock or the calendar.
I had to laugh because she said, if you try to talk to them, and Connie, that was a good question, Connie. If you try to talk to them, they still stank. Yeah, I guess you ain't ready yet. It's Thanksgiving time, and it's like 50 of us in the house. Hey, cousins. Okay, God bless you. And let's keep it moving, y'all. Listen, I'm gonna end with this, y'all. We're moving very quickly to the end. I'm gonna move with this. Listen, it's unfortunate sometimes that we have to deal with the toxicity within our family and friends and people that are very close to us. But guess what? You can find help and hope. There's other ways to cope. We gave you ways to cope, but guess what other ways are to cope? I think I read it before, but guess what? Family is not solely on blood, okay? It's not solely on blood. So you can reach out. There's other people out there that are there to support you. There's other people out there that are there to embrace you, that are there to love you. And so we have this article here that we found. It says, listen, the people who choose you, the people who you feel deeply connected to. Family is not solely blood, but it's also the people that choose you, the people who you feel deeply connected to, the people who lovingly hold you accountable, the people who offer you a sense of safety, the people who consistently show up for you, the people who are willing to give you what you need, the people who you know well, who know you well and love you greatly. It makes a big difference. Listen, something we don't talk about, forcing close relationships with siblings or family members is exhausting. For many reasons, you might find it hard to connect. And I'm just going to, I know it says sibling, but you may find it hard to connect with a family member but guess what? You aren't alone. And listen, relationships can be complicated because there's a pressured level of closeness. But remember this, you can be cordial, y'all, without being close. I know that's a hard thing for people to embrace, but you can be cordial without being close. That doesn't take away from the love of God. Listen, so we got to love. Guess what? Wisdom through the love of God saying, bring a distance. You know, how are you going to win? You trying to win them over. You wouldn't. You making things worse. Come on, praise the Lord. Give me a hug. No. Let time take its place. Let the Lord work that thing out, like Mrs. Marcia said. And when the time comes, you'll see when they're ready. They'll come around. And like I said this offline. We were talking last week offline, and I had shared about how do you know if the person's ready? Listen, God can make it happen. And I'm a firm believer. God can set things up where he just puts you in a situation with that family member, and life happens where that family member may need to call you, maybe call you to ask you a question, call you because they need you for something, or y'all happen to bump in at the right time somewhere, and it opens up communication. So many different things can happen, but let time take its place. It's definitely, patience is a virtue. Listen, y'all, we made it another Thursday night. I hope y'all enjoying this like a series of conversation when it comes to relationships. And we're getting here, y'all. We're in this love month, as they call it. So stay tuned, because we're going to get into some future conversations. We're going to be talking about it real soon, about a conversation called Teach Me How to Love You. Oh, y'all, that's coming soon. Y'all need to stay focused on that. Stay close with us here at Sound Gospel Radio, because we're going to talk about a conversation real soon called Teach Me How to Love You, y'all. We're going to get there. Listen, y'all, we're building hope. We're transferring lives 24/7. This is Sound Gospel Radio. I wish you all a great night. But guess what? To those that are listening to our radio station, keep it locked at Sound Gospel Radio. You can go to soundgospelradio.com. You can listen to gospel music 24/7. So those that are listening, we'll be right back with some great music. But listen. You can be free. You can be whole. And guess why? Because here at Sound Gospel Radio, we're building hope, transforming lives 24/7.
Building hope, transforming lives 24/7. Sound Gospel Radio.